border crisis. Last month alone, our southern border saw over 230,000 encounters. It is time for Democrats to work with Republicans to secure the border, and the majority of voters agree. Last night was a big night. House Republicans passed the rule to bring 4 appropriations bills to the House floor for consideration. These appropriation bills include many conservative wins for the American people and rein in extreme Democrats' reckless spending. Our Homeland Security Appropriations Bill secures the border by increasing the number of Border Patrol agents to 22,000 and finishing the wall on our southern border. It also prohibits funding for Joe Biden's failed open border policies that have led to a border crisis across America. Our defense appropriations bill, it eliminates woke DoD programs. It cuts $20 billion from Joe Biden's wasteful budget and redirects funding to war-fighting needs. And it gives our brave service members a historic pay raise. Our state and foreign appropriations bill protects life by including the expanded Mexico City policy. It prohibits funds for groups facilitating illegal immigration to our border, and it counters communist China's aggression. And our ag appropriations bill prohibits foreign adversaries like communist China from buying up American farmland. This is an important bill that I've worked on for a number of years. And it eliminates funding for radical Green New Deal policies, and it terminates Joe Biden's Waters of the U.S. rule. From protecting American values at home to ensuring our national security abroad, House Republicans are committed to curbing Joe Biden's reckless spending and delivering results for the American people, especially securing the border. I now am honored to hand it over to one of our appropriators, Michael Cloud from the state of Texas. Michael.
Well, thanks for being here, and thought I'd take a second to talk to you about maybe what you don't see happening. Of course, anytime you come to a funding deadline, all the attention goes to that. But I wanted to talk to you about a little bit the process of how we got here. One thing you're seeing in the Republican majority is we are rewriting the muscle memory of how Congress works. And sure, it's harder to run a House when you actually get to read the bills because people have input on the bills. It's harder to run it when you're offered amendments and people get to have say into the bills. And it's also harder when you don't just automatically go to the CR to omnibus showdown. But this is what the Republican majority is committed to doing, committed to passing appropriations bills, committed to working the process, committed to restoring this government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's one of the things that I'm really, really proud of. These bills are conservative. These bills are what many have called the many years since we've had the cleanest comb through of these appropriations bills, where we've gotten back to just putting this government, right-sizing our government and getting us back to the priorities that this government should be working on. Things like strengthening our military, getting our military focused on its job of protecting and securing our liberties and defending our interests, getting our borders secure, and to continuing to do that. Only in D.C. do you get to get away with measuring success by how much money you spend. We're turning the corner on that, realizing the financial crisis that we're facing as a nation and making sure that we rightfully rein in spending while we meet the priorities of this nation. And so it's good to see these appropriations bills moving forward. And I hope you can appreciate the good work that's going into doing this differently, because the American people are tired of the status quo of kicking the can down the road. And you can see that our majority is working to make sure that happens for the American people.
We'll now hear from our whip, Tom Emmer.
Hey. Thank you. I identify with both the conference chair's remarks and Michael Cloud's remarks, but for me, it's a big day in Congress for more reasons than what we've talked about so far. Today, SEC Chair Gary Gensler is going to testify before the House Financial Services Committee. And boy, does he have a lot to answer for. Under Gary Gensler's leadership, I would say failed leadership, the SEC has been an incompetent cop on the beat. Throughout his career, Gensler has been relentlessly loyal to the biggest institutions at the expense of everyday Americans. Today, he's going to face some important questions about that. Gary Gensler has worked to consolidate his own power, even though it means crushing opportunities and, frankly, the financial future of this country. This strategy hasn't been successful for him. As you note, the SEC continues to lose again and again in the courts. on its crusade against digital asset innovation. So it should be increasingly obvious that the crypto industry is not an industry rife with non-compliance. Rogue bureaucrats like Gary Gensler are supposed to be working for the people, not reigning over them. I, for one, would like to see the SEC return to its mission and make sure that they protect opportunities for every American who wants to participate in the greatest capital markets in the world. Digital asset innovation is an important part of that. Despite what Gary Gensler thinks, he is not a government of one. He is a bureaucrat who answers to Congress, and I look forward to having him before our committee today. And now I turn it over to our beloved leader, the toughest man in Congress, Steve Scalise.
Well, thank you, Whip, for the great job you've been doing. And it's good to see all of you. A lot of friends here. I'm looking at Chad because I miss, believe this or not, I miss getting chased through the halls of Congress by Chad Pergram. Last night I got to get that opportunity again coming back to work as we were doing the rule vote, pre and post rule vote, as well as the other things we're doing. If I can just for a couple of minutes, just share a little bit of a health update with you that I shared with my colleagues this morning at conference, and then obviously we'll get into the issues of the day and the week and take your questions. But I, a little over a month ago, was diagnosed with myeloma, as you well know, but we had quick decisions to make in the hospital, and that was, do we go into an aggressive form of chemotherapy? And luckily, my oncologist in New Orleans, who we continue to consult with on a very regular basis, has been phenomenal at walking me through, what I need to do to first focus on my health, because that has been the main focus, is how do we address the cancer, because the cancers would put me in the hospital and was doing a lot of damage to my body. And so we had to get control over that and have a plan. And luckily they had a plan. They had treatments that have been approved by the FDA for many, many years on this form of cancer that many, many people have been using for decades, thank God. And I have made a decision to aggressively pursue it. And I'm a month in to the treatments, and the way that it works with this form of cancer is it goes in about a little over 3.5 week treatments, and then they want to evaluate and see how your body's responding, if they need to make tweaks, and then you go to another 3.5 week round of treatment for a period of months until they feel like you don't need to take the treatments anymore because you have adequately attacked the cancer. So we're a month in now. Last week I did a full round of evaluations. That's where I was working with my doctors, running a whole lot of tests. They came back with the tests. The good news is the cancer has dropped dramatically because of the success of the chemotherapy attacking the cancer. So thank God those prayers have been answered. We're continuing to follow my doctor's advice, and my doctor said, you can come back to work. And that's why I'm here, and we are here for a full week of work and whatever else it's going to take. But obviously there's been a lot of work going on. A lot of it I've been doing by phone. It's a lot nicer to be doing it here in person with my colleagues. And as I thanked Tom Cole and the Rules Committee for the work that they did, not just passing a rule, but think of all the work that the Rules Committee did, putting together a rule that brought 4 bills to the floor this week, and working with a lot of members, bringing over 440 different amendments to the floor that we started debating last night. We were here till about 12:30 last night voting on a number of those amendments. We'll have 2 long vote series today with 2-minute votes. We're able to accomplish a lot. We'll hopefully do a long vote series, probably around 4:30, and then this evening, depending on how many votes we get through, might be a late night 10:30 or so vote series. And just keep working through the amendments and then finally get the final passage on the 4 bills. The questions you will ask is, do you have the votes to pass the bill? Those are all fair questions. One thing you don't hear a lot is, what is in the bills? These are 4 bills that combined will fund about 75% of the government. As we're talking about, is there going to be a shutdown? Is government going to be funded? What are the priorities of the American people in funding the government? And frankly, that's what we've been focusing our time on, with a Cloud and the appropriators with Tom Emmer as the whip, putting together the coalitions, what Tom Cole and the Rules Committee have been doing. All of the focus from Speaker McCarthy on down has been, number one, how do we make government address the needs of the people? And really what the people have been saying is, let's get to pre-COVID levels on spending, because we can't just keep writing blank checks. You know, this idea all week you're hearing from Democrats, all they want to talk about is how much more money to spend, as if there's money sitting in a piggy bank. This is mostly borrowed money that they're talking about. And by the way, it's not borrowed money from ourselves, it's borrowed money from our grandchildren. So every time you hear a Democrat walking around DC this week going, I can't believe that's going to be cut, say, oh, okay, are you comfortable sending the bill on a credit card to your grandchildren? Because that's what they're doing. They're not paying for it today. They're not paying for it tomorrow. They want to track another $2 trillion in debt that's going to be sent to our grandchildren to pay for things that government wasn't doing just 2 years ago. We need to get our government back focused on the things that matter to families in America, having a strong national defense and having a strong closed border. And we're going to be focusing a lot on getting this border under control, even though President Biden doesn't want to. You're even seeing people like Jay Johnson, who was the Homeland Security Secretary under Barack Obama, who started working on securing the border. Donald Trump secured the border. Joe Biden opened up America's border to devastating consequences. Has anybody asked the president, what is your plan to do with 8 million people that you've let into this country illegally? Whatever the real number is. You know, you show me what your number is. Estimates are in the millions. And mayors all across America, including Democrat mayors, all across America, are saying enough is enough. This crisis has to end, and President Biden doesn't care. Well, House Republicans do, and we are dealing with this issue. If you look at one of the things that's included in the rule we passed last night and the bills we're going to be bringing to the floor this week, including the Homeland Security funding bill, it deals with securing the border. David Joyce's bill combined with H.R. 2. It's all part of the rule that we put in a package. H.R. 2 focuses on more border agents, technology, things that need to be done that were working. Many of these things were already being done. Some of them are new technologies, new things that our border agents are telling us they need. You talk to border agents, they know what the problems are. President Biden doesn't want to listen to them. The vice president won't listen to them because they don't want to solve the problem. We do. And we're going to be focusing on not just properly funding the government, but securing America's border. Both of those debates need to happen this week. You're going to see a robust debate on the House floor all week through today, tomorrow, and as long as it takes to address these serious problems. That's what House Republicans are focused on. And frankly, I think it's changing the narrative. You're seeing it on every mainstream media outlet. Every media outlet is covering this crisis because everyone in America knows it's a crisis. And the president thinks if he hides from the issue, it will go away. The issue's not going away. We're bringing it to the White House because we're addressing it in the government funding package this week. This issue is not going to go away because we care about the issue just like Americans do. And President Biden's going to have to care about it as well once we pass these bills. We'll be happy to open up for questions. Chad. Please do. I can run as fast as I could run before the shooting, I guess. But as Emmer would say, it wasn't that fast. But
so that said, obviously I understand the reasons Republicans are fighting on the border. I understand the importance of that to the party and from your guys' vantage point. But to make this ask at this late a time, when the Senate just moved a bill with more than 3/4 of their members here, that's not a route to avoid a government shutdown. Explain to us, based on your bill and based on the Senate bill, and there the twain shall meet, how that funds the government by 12:01 Sunday.
Yeah, this isn't a new issue, by the way. We passed H.R. 2 months ago. The Senate's ignored that bill. The Senate has ignored this problem just like the president has. So they're culpable in this problem. But again, I think mainstream Washington thinks the problem just goes away if they don't talk about it. America knows this is a problem. It's a path. It's a path if we pass the bills. And ultimately, have you seen President Biden engaged in this debate? Of course not, because he wants the problem to go away. If we're able to actually pass the legislation, and we're not at the midnight hour right now, I wish the White House had engaged in this debate months ago when we passed H.R. 2. I wish the Senate engaged in this debate when we passed H.R. 2, but they didn't. But we were doing our job months ago, but it wasn't the midnight hour, so people don't pay as much attention. Well, now we're here, and we're still talking about the same issue, but you know what else is happening? The whole mainstream media is talking about this issue. That wasn't happening 6 months ago. And so people all around America are talking about it. The mayor of New York is talking about it as one of the biggest threats to the city of New York. He wasn't talking about that 6 months ago. And so the dynamics of this issue have changed all around America because now every town is a border town, and that's crystal clear to everybody but the White House and maybe the Senate. But you know what? If we keep talking about this as part of what needs to happen to properly fund the government, how can they pass a CR that funds Biden's open border process and call that a victory for anybody but Washington insiders? That doesn't solve an ounce of the because it continues to send the magnet across not just South and Central America. We've got people coming from over 150 countries, people on the terrorist watch list being identified over and over again. We don't know how many. You can't find out how many. Anyone in the press can tell me an honest number of how many people on the terrorist watch list have been caught. We all know they've been caught. We just don't know how many because the administration won't tell you. They know a number. I promise you they know a number, and it's a low number because they haven't caught everybody. But has the White House been honest with anyone in this room, including the press, about how many people on the terrorist watch list they have caught coming across our open southern border? They can stop that, and they don't want to. So the American people want this problem solved. We're going to keep at it. Yeah.
What's the plan to get some of those GOP holdout votes, those no votes, to go with Speaker McCarthy's short-term measure?
We've had a lot of really good conversations, even in conference this morning. You know, you're seeing a lot of dialogue. And again, this has been going on for weeks in the whip's office, in Rules Committee, in a number of different settings where members who, I mean, I won't speak for any members, and we don't talk about what happens in conference, but there was a member, probably was on the internet, there was a member of Congress who stood up and said, I've never voted for any of these 4 bills, and I'm voting for all 4 of them. You know, that's the kind of headway that's been made because members are talking to each other in a different way right now because there's so much at stake. The country is in such a volatile spot right now, and President Biden's put the country in this spot to the point where Democrat leaders don't even want Joe Biden to run for re-election. This country's at a perilous moment, and at least you've got one House that's standing up and saying, let's confront these problems. And again, the Senate, this is the way the game's played in the Senate. They'll sit around and wait till the midnight hour, and they'll find enough votes to cobble together 70 votes maybe to just keep things going down the track where the train's going to run into a wall. That's not leadership. Somebody's got to take the reins and say, we're going to address the problems facing this country, and House Republicans are doing it. And I really do think if we put the skins on the wall, if we pass the bills this week to do that, the Senate will follow, and the White House will have to follow because the country's there.
Last question. Welcome back.
Good to be back.
I was wondering if I could direct my questions.
You absolutely can.
Well, I don't know. Where do I direct my answers?
To the microphone.
So I know this was similar to the question, but yes or no, do you have the votes to pass the CR?
Actually, it's a great question. This is an ongoing process. I would add to what our leader was talking about. What's different? What's different is what Michael Cloud talked about. There's an open process that I've been here, this is my 9th year. The members that I was elected with, including Elise Stefanik, Elise and I have never, since we've been here, been involved in an open process when it comes to the appropriations process. Members being able to weigh in with their own amendments and have debates over really important issues. That is going to make a difference as we go to the finish line this week, but that's not the finish line because we're going to have probably more in the next couple of weeks to come. And as the process goes forward, everybody will be heard. We'll see what happens.
And do you have the votes for the DHS bill coming to the floor today?
So the problem that you have right now is that we went till, what was it, 1 a.m. this morning?
Yeah.
1 a.m. this morning, and we've got open whips, and we're talking to members to see if there are issues still and what their challenges are. We're just going to do our job. And the beauty of it is we don't tell members what they have to do. They will do what's best for their constituents and for themselves. And I think the bill that was put out last night, the Homeland Security bill, is one of the better efforts of the appropriations process. David Joyce and company, Michael, everybody on that committee did a great job. So I'm confident, but you got to wait. You got to work through the process.
And there are no bills in final passage today.
Right.
Tomorrow is with that. Today, we still do amendments on the remaining bills.
Thanks, everyone. We're about to face a shutdown. Could you take
One
more
more.
than 3 questions?
How compelling of a case is that? Sure, because you asked it in such a compelling way.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
And then we have a meeting with the speaker that we don't want to keep him waiting.
Sure. Yes, please. Your conference is united on the border. We hear that. We've heard that from your members all morning. We hear that from you right now. But the reason we are facing the shutdown right now is overspending concern. You
Yeah.
talked about that today, too. Members coming out of the conference this morning, a group of them were saying they will not support a CR until all 12 appropriations bills are passed. Can you explain to the American people, we've known this deadline was coming for months, why it is that the House has not been able to get to those 12 bills when you knew your members wanted them and you had all this time? Why are we just now at the deadline dealing with this?
Yeah, and we've got dual track conversations going on. I mean, dual track meaning border security being one of the big issues we're discussing. HR2 is a policy bill that's passed tied to the appropriations bill, which is the Homeland Security package, which funds a lot of those initiatives, including more border agents, which is critical in the Joyce bill. If you look at the overall spending levels, and we talked about that this morning again in conference, these are ongoing conversations. There's 2 different numbers, but the numbers have been moving lower, and we've been talking. And look, there's a lot of members on a lot of different sides of our conference that as you go lower, they get nervous, and you've got to work through that as well. So we're having these conversations on an ongoing basis, and which areas can we get into, the remaining bills. There's some members that aren't supporting those remaining bills. There's a reason those bills haven't come up and passed. DOD rule couldn't pass last week. So there is vote issues as well. And as long as the votes are there, we'll pass the bills. But there's still questions about members that don't want to vote for certain bills. I mean, look at state and foreign ops. When's the last time a state and foreign ops bill has been passed? Years. And yet we're bringing that bill up, and hopefully we can pass that bill. But some of these bills are bills that haven't passed as standalone in years because they're just complicated bills with members of Congress, and you got to work through that. And we're working through that right now. So we're going to keep those conversations going. We'll see y'all on the floor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right. That's good. Yeah, to assure it. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Back at it.
How's it going today? Another day in paradise. How's it going today? I like the jacket.
Thank you.
For sure.
I like the tie.
Thank you. Goodwill bargain bin. Celsius. All good? How's it going today? Have a good one. Got you. I can give it 2 for this one. Yeah. Mic check. 1 2. Mic check. 1 2 3. Testing testing. 1 2 3. Testing testing. 1 2 3. Mic check. 1 2. Okay, that's a good response. They're both here. Not starting just yet, just a heads up.
It's all of our Mondays. Yes, correct. Just as I said that, I was like, wait, me too. Me too. It is all of our Mondays today. Are you gonna be there again this weekend? You were right. I can't imagine. I don't understand if I'm seeing things or.
No,
you're
I'm
seeing.
seeing
Okay.
I'm actually not real.
Okay, great. You're a hologram. Nice.
You're also not real?
You and me
Are
both.
we all feeling this way? Okay, great.
Dude, the more chaos, the better. I'm gonna be what? I might leave before you get this. My first day. That's why I like the chaos. I think I've seen one before. One or two. I was there because I figured he's not the same.
Heads up.
Good morning, everyone. We're exactly 3 days away from an extreme Republican shutdown. That means 7 million women and children would go without food assistance because of this Republican extremism. 1.3 million service members would be forced to work without pay. 10,000 children would lose access to Head Start. These might just be numbers and statistics for MAGA extremists, but to House Democrats, these are real people's lives. In nearly 10 months of control in the House of Representatives, they have done nothing to lower costs, to improve public safety, or invested a single dollar in border security, and they've voted to roll back hundreds of thousands of good-paying, clean energy jobs. They have no record to speak of because they're too busy fighting amongst themselves or fighting to curry favor with their favorite former president. The extreme Republican chaos is hurting our economic recovery and making Americans less safe. House Democrats stand ready to work to keep government open, to end the chaos, and to work on the most pressing matters that the American public care about. Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you. Chairman Aguilar detailed the high cost of a government shutdown. It's going to hurt our economy and endanger our national security. And how do we get here? We got here because Speaker Kevin McCarthy went back on his word. He reneged on a deal that he made with President Biden just a few months after he consummated that deal. And this wasn't just a handshake agreement. This was a deal that was put in writing, shown to the American people, and literally voted into law. Democrats, Republicans disagree on many issues. We work together on various issues. But in this town, your word still matters. How do we, the American people, trust Kevin McCarthy if he simply goes back on a deal that was put into law? I ask Kevin McCarthy to simply honor the deal that he made that was voted into law and to start taking steps to rebuild his integrity again.
Questions? Nick?
Sir, do you have any response to the calls for Senator Menendez to resign?
I think Senator Menendez, just like every American, is due the opportunity to have a fair trial. He has an incredible track record, over 50 years of service to folks in New Jersey. He has lifted up issues that the Latino community cares about time and time again. It doesn't bring me or any of us joy to say that he should resign, but he should. For the betterment of the Democratic Party, for the people of New Jersey, it's better that he fights this trial outside of the halls of Congress. I'd also say that Latinos face barriers and discrimination across the board in so many categories, including in our justice system. This is not that. What we read in the indictment and the charges, we should not conflate the discrimination and the issues and the barriers that Latinos have in the justice system and across industries to what we see there today and the struggles that Latinos face and the barriers that they face in so many ways. But it would be best if he resigned. Next question.
Congressman Gates made another threat on the floor today to Speaker McCarthy and basically said it would be up to Democrats to bail him out. Has there been any talk in the Democratic caucus about that?
Well, right now, the talk in the Democratic caucus is how do we keep government open? We realize that extremists like Matt Gaetz have a lot of other ideas on what they want to do, and the revenge tour that they have, fighting for the former president. But right now, our focus is on what's in front of us. He has opportunities. It's not lost on us that is a part of the discussions to become speaker. He lowered the threshold on the motion to vacate. It was one of the concessions that he made. So, Speaker McCarthy did this to himself. But if Matt Gaetz or anyone else brings that, the Democratic caucus will have a conversation and we'll chart a path forward. But right now, that is not our focus. Our focus is keeping government open. Okay. I didn't give Ted an opportunity to answer the Menendez question.
I agree with the thoughtful comments of Chairman Aguilar.
Oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Go ahead.
Congressman Bacon said today that he's been in communication with Democratic leadership with regards to the Problem Solvers Caucus proposal on the government shutdown and avoiding that. He said it would be obviously easier if they had help from either party's leadership to try to bring that to the floor. Is that something Democratic leadership would consider if we do end up at a shutdown or on the precipice of one? Is assisting the Problem Solvers Caucus there?
I'm not aware of any communication other than I know Leader Jeffries spoke to the Problem Solvers Caucus. It was reported, last week. It's incredibly frustrating that so-called moderates time and time again have an inability to stand up to their leadership. They are going down to the floor and they are voting on the most extreme amendments now. And they have paved the way to pass appropriations bills that cut funding for women, infant, and children funding, to cut Head Start funding, to cut Title I education, to cut educators out of our classrooms. That's what they've signed up for. If they are interested in charting a path to avoid a catastrophic shutdown, we're willing to engage in those discussions. But they time and time again have proven that they have an inability to stand up to their leadership. We have been very clear that there are three elements to a CR that are needed. One, FY23 funding levels continue. Two, get rid of the poison pill writers that they are intent on carrying forward to eliminate reproductive freedom and to decimate the freedoms that we hold dear. And third is meeting the needs of the American public when it comes to Ukraine and our national security, as well as disaster assistance. If they're willing to meet those needs, by the way, that has bipartisan support in the Senate, then we're willing to work to make that happen. But they have not yet proven that they are willing to push back on their own leadership.
Is border security a non-starter if it is tied to a CR?
No. In fact, President Biden proposed $4 billion in a supplemental that addressed border security. that put $800 million of additional money into pushing back against fentanyl coming into our country. We absolutely support border security. That's why we want to fund the government. We don't believe furloughing Customs and Border Patrol officers or making them work and not paying them is a good national security strategy. So Democrats stand willing to work on these issues just as we have, in the past. It's unfortunate that the extreme Republican shutdown craze is going to negatively affect it, but it will affect morale, it will affect operations, and it's something we need to make sure doesn't happen.
Just to clarify, HR 2 specifically, since Republicans are in charge of the House, that's the border security bill they want to ride with the CR. Is that a non-starter?
Yeah, that's not a real border security bill. I mean, it's Republican fantasy land. It has no path to passing in the Senate. Senators have said that. It had 0 votes from House Democrats. Right now, the only way this works, the only way we avoid a shutdown is through a bipartisan measure. Speaker McCarthy knows it. Our senators know it. And it's unfortunate that he has chosen to isolate himself and put himself on an island when House Democrats, Senate Republicans, and President Biden all want to avoid a shutdown. They seem intent on supporting one. And so that bill has no path to having bipartisan support. So that's why it does not appear that it will be included in any type of effort, but we stand willing to work on border security measures as we have.
Sure. So it's even actually worse than that in terms of what Republicans are doing. If you look at their proposed appropriations bill for Homeland Security, it's going to hurt border security. And this CR that the Senate is working on, it went through an initial vote that had 77 senators vote for it. That's a very large bipartisan vote. We expect to come out of the Senate with a large bipartisan vote. That really is the only path forward. And again, we're just asking Speaker McCarthy to honor his word to the American people.
It's important to know, we'll see if this CR, the Republican House Senate CR comes on the floor, but that based on the funding levels that they've indicated, it would get rid of 2,000 Customs and Border Patrol officers and agents, which would have a negative effect, and it's something that they should be asked in the back.
Congressman, thank you. The Farm Bill expires in 3 days, and a lot of the larger programs start to expire at the end of the year. With all of the delays in the House and kind of all the chaos on the floor, is it possible to pass a Farm Bill or an extension before the year is over?
We hold out hope. Just like important measures like the FAA. I know the FAA reauthorization is included in this CR. We hold out hope. The Farm Bill has been a bipartisan measure in the past. We look forward to leadership on both sides working on those issues. It's been a little delayed with this Republican chaos that we're seeing. I think that's kind of taken some calendar days away from opportunities to work on a bipartisan farm bill, but we stand ready to work with our colleagues on a farm bill that is strong, that lifts up America's farmers, that provides the resources necessary to support supplemental nutrition and feeding kids. Those are the things that are important to Democrats and Republicans, and we hope that those priorities are carried forward in the farm bill before the end of the year.
Senate leaders yesterday unveiled the continuing resolution, keep the government funded until November 17th. The Senate advancing on a bipartisan basis. This morning, Speaker McCarthy said he doesn't see support for it in the House. I'm curious your thoughts on this CR and B. Do you think it would be a mistake if McCarthy did not bring that to the floor?
No, I think it'd be a huge mistake. I think it would mean that we have Republican led shutdown. I think that's what it leads to. If Kevin McCarthy doesn't feel it has the votes, let's be very specific. He doesn't feel it has, 218 Republicans. That's all he ever cares about. He should put it on the floor. If he doesn't think it has the votes, he should put it on the floor. But my guess, I would defer to Whip Catherine Clark, but I'm guessing north of 315 votes that measure would have to avoid a shutdown. Maybe a little higher than that. But that bill that CR would have the votes on the floor. It just doesn't have the votes of the MAGA extremists who gave McCarthy his job. And so that's what he has trouble understanding.
When it comes to the cuts that are being proposed, this is for pretty much just 1 month. How would that impact us? Why is that such a problem that we see these cuts just for 1 month?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a painful reminder of what the Republican-led chaos would mean. They want these cuts to send a point. It's never about people. It's always about cuts and harm. That's what they want to do. They want to send a message to the American public. Unfortunately, the message that they want to send generally means fewer services, longer delays, fewer Social Security folks working to help people navigate their issues. And so, over 20%, cuts to some of these, vital programs, they do it just to make a point. Cutting education dollars, means Title I teachers out of the classrooms. That's harmful in communities from California, where the vice chair and I live. That's thousands of teachers. Those are harmful effects to this shutdown. They are not talking about, 12 months of cuts. They want to make a point with 6 weeks in cuts to pave the way to have these broader conversations, all with the background, by the way, that, what the vice chair said. Kevin McCarthy cut a deal. He may not like the deal today, but he made pains to negotiate that deal himself with President Biden. And so we believe that those are the numbers that should become law. By the way, that's what the Senate believes as well. And unfortunately, the extremists won't let the Speaker abide by the deal that he made. Connie?
There's now this strategy about Republicans working with Democrats on defeating a previous question to get a CR across. Can you talk about how likely something like that is versus a discharge petition versus sure?
I mean, it's the same answer, that I gave to the Don Bacon conversation. The procedure, doesn't matter. There are various legislative avenues that are available. What we lack aren't legislative opportunities. What we lack is the will of a handful of so-called Republican moderates to do what is in the best interest of the American public, to keep government open, to fund government, to invest resources into protecting the freedom for the Ukrainian people, to replenish the disaster relief fund that is providing critical support to people in Hawaii and Florida and Vermont. We lack the will of so-called moderates. We don't lack legislative options, but if they
Leaning towards any?
no, honestly, it doesn't matter. Because they would all have the same effect if we had individuals who are willing to stand up to Republican leadership and help us avoid a shutdown. Last question, Lisa. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, Lisa. Did you want to?
Sure. Let me just make this clear again. Who is honoring this deal between Speaker McCarthy and Joe Biden that was voted into law? Well, Senate Republicans are, as are Senate Democrats and House Democrats, and the overwhelming majority of the House Republican caucus. The only people not honoring this deal are a handful of extreme right-wing MAGA Republicans that's going to send our country into a totally unnecessary government shutdown. And we're just asking Kevin McCarthy to stand up, rebuild his integrity, and honor his word.
Lisa, last question.
Things can change fast around here, but at this point, it feels like it would take a legislative and political miracle to avoid a shutdown, the way what we're hearing from especially House Republicans. My question to you is, this happens a lot in these shutdowns, but we're going to start hearing debates over who should get paid and how. Do you believe active duty military should be paid during the shutdown? Do you believe lawmakers should be paid? And do you believe House staff members should be paid?
Well, I think we should focus all of our efforts to avoiding a shutdown. Full stop. That is what we are focused on. But as we get closer to a Republican-led shutdown, we're going to have to answer those questions. the House majority, so Republicans in the House through the House Administration Committee, will issue guidance to employees and to members. They may do that today, they may do that tomorrow, but sometime in the near future that will come. As soon as we have that guidance, I think we'll all be free to give you our opinions on this. My preference, there was a Pay Our Military Act that has been passed, that was passed into law in the 2013 shutdown. We only had a partial shutdown in 1819, as you recall. But my preference would be that we don't lapse funding, or that we don't miss paychecks to people providing essential services. But we'll see where Republican guidance is. We have not passed appropriations bills into law, and so that could lead to consequences, because Kevin McCarthy has an inability to stand by his deal and to fund government. Thank you so much.